Welcome back to the Blue White Tailgate Show, and it is time for one of our favorite segments. Time to sit in with Dr. Phil and talk a little recruiting. You know, Doc, we're going to talk defensive line this week. Why don't you give us a little overview of what's going on in the recruiting circuit on the defensive line?
I'll tell you, John, that's probably one area where Penn State's really done a tremendous job in this recruiting class. They got 4 defensive tackles already, but what's really special about the defensive tackles they got, 3 of them can play on both sides of the football. Derek Dowry, the young man from Winchester, Virginia, Brian Gia, the young man from Baltimore, Maryland, and Austin Johnson, the young man from Richland, New Jersey, which happens to be the same school as Jack Crawford when he played his high school football.
Well, let's take a closer look at each of these guys. Why don't you start with Derek Dowry?
Derek's a really interesting kid. He's about 6'3", and he's about 300 pounds, put on about 15 pounds since the 2010 football season, John. And he's a guy that can play on both sides of the football, offensive guard, defensive tackle. At John Hanley High School in Virginia, his junior year, he's a tackling machine. He had 145 tackles and like 11 sacks. Had a really spectacular junior season, and he can play both defensive tackle positions.
And like you're saying, guys that can play 2 ways. Common thread with this class. You know, why don't you tell us a little bit about Brian Gaya, the standout from Baltimore?
Yeah, he's a big kid, about 6'5", 285 pounds. He's from the Gilman School in Baltimore. Might be the best academic school in the entire Baltimore area. He's a kid that was a two-time All-Metro performer by the Baltimore Sun. And it really came down for a tough decision. He always wanted to go to Alabama, but Penn State and Maryland were the other 2 schools, and he ended up picking the Nittany Lions over Alabama.
Now, Austin Johnson. Give us a great in-depth description of Austin Johnson, what everybody's going to love about this kid when he gets here.
He's probably the least known of all the guys, John, because he's 6'4", he's about 282 pounds. He's from St. Augustine High School in Richland, New Jersey. As I said before, same school as Jack Crawford. Not many people knew about him because his high school coach was ill his junior season, so he didn't get out the tapes to get it out to the schools. And he really performed well at Penn State's summer football camp, and that's when they really liked him. Larry Johnson fell in love with him, and he's another kid who can play offensive guard or defensive tackle. They like his versatility.
Now, Tommy Schutt, the heir to the football helmet fortune. Tell us a little bit about him.
Well, he's the #1 guy, the prime prospect that they recruited at defensive tackle. Rivals.com ranked Tommy Schutt as the 5th best defensive tackle in the country, John, and 40th best overall prospect at any position. You know, he's 6'3", 310 pounds, and he has a pretty amazing first step. And like you said, if you ever watch the Penn State football team, they got that little Schutt logo on the back of their helmets, and so he's familiar with the Penn State football program.
Looking for a discount on new helmets next year, for
right,
sure.
Right.
Now, you know, they're not quite done yet on the defensive side of the ball. Take us through what remains to be done yet.
They still got some prime time defensive line prospects that they want, and you got to start with Noah Spence. He's my #1 defensive end in the country. 6'4", 245, has 4.5 40-yard speed. Tremendous student athlete, 3.5 GPA from Bishop McDevitt High School in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. His first step reminds me of Aaron Maben. In his high school career, John, 42 career high school sacks. This guy has, all written all over him. He's going to be a great college football player. Then they got 2 other guys that they're really trying to recruit. Jamal Pollard, who actually committed to them back in April, but then ran into some academic problems. They're back in it with him. I think he might be one of the top 2 offensive and defensive tackle prospects in the entire Northeast for the class of 2012. And then there's one other kid, Ryan Watson, who's about 6'4", 280 from Good Counsel High School in Albany, Maryland, and they might be the leader for him. And he's another guy, play both sides of the football.
Phil, that is fantastic news. Sounds like recruiting is going well. When we come back, Phil's going to head over to the desk, and they're going to break down the Illini.